Hey guys, I really have to say this, that I watched CodeStrap's first video, or I mean his last video, Foundry Explained. This is after I watched it and after I shot my initial clip, but I'm gonna put it at the beginning of the video because you guys really have to show him some love. Hit the subscribe button and check out his content, because he seems to have a lot of content from a technical point of view. And it has come out so many times where people are like, oh, you know, Palantir is competing with Snowflake, Palantir is competing with Google, AWS, blah, blah, blah. But I always knew that Alex Karp strongly believed that Palantir was the best software solution, the best data offering on the market now and for many years to come. And it's just nice, you know, because as a CPA and MBA, I don't have that technical knowledge, but CodeStrap is a software engineer based on what I've gathered, and he's able to walk you through the Palantir Foundry experience in simple terms. So you guys definitely need to check him out. Now I'm gonna go back to the beginning of the video and we're gonna roll it. Hey everybody, welcome to the Bliss Life. Today I'm going to be continuing my due diligence on Palantir. I came across a super interesting post on the Palantir Technologies Reddit group. So in it, someone mentioned that Foundry for Builders was rejected at their firm. Initially, they were all excited with the idea of jumping onto Foundry, but after evaluating their options, they decided not to go with the product. Some of the comments did mention that, you know, there was a lot of ego involved with the internal company, the in-house IT team, saying that, you know, we could do it ourselves. We don't need to go with Foundry. But even though they saw there was a lot of benefits with Foundry, now I'm going to watch the video. This is a purely technical video from a software engineer, so I am going to see it for the first time. But before we do, I think it's relevant to check out what Shyam said in the last earnings call, which refers to the in-house IT teams being the biggest competitors against Palantir, and not so much other firms, because there are no other firms that can successfully do what Palantir does, which is why we see partnerships with Palantir and Amazon Web Services, Palantir and Big Bear AI, you know, Palantir and this, that, and the other. So let's just listen to the call first, and then we'll jump into that video.
Shyam, this first one's for you. Jason B. and Jacob P. both ask, does Palantir view any other AI companies as competitors? If so, what makes Palantir's platforms a better choice?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jacob. Our competition is not any other company. It's really, the competition is our customer, specifically our customer's IT department and their desire to build their own solution. And you know what? It's not even really their fault. There's an army of consultants and cloud providers who peddle completely bogus DIY architectures that are never going to work. It took us 15 years and nearly $3 billion in development, and we continue to innovate every day. Just last week, we had a meeting with the Fortune 200 CIO who was so excited to see Foundry because he had spent the last 3 years trying unsuccessfully to solve the same problems with the leading cloud provider. 3 years. And they aren't the only ones. These are our favorite conversations because, having tried and failed, the customer knows exactly how valuable it is to buy a solution that works in days at scale. But that's not really what makes us a better choice. We're a better choice because we focus exclusively on alpha, that we invest in capabilities that enable a company to uniquely express their strategy. Whereas most enterprise software makes the customer more similar to the competition, our products, they are designed to make them more different, more differentiated.
So we see clearly from here that there is a big misconception, you know, comes up a lot. Oh, Palantir has so many competitors, they're so similar to everyone. No, they're not. The biggest competitor is the internal companies and their IT teams, who do balk at the idea of spending licensing fees to put data together in a logical, reasonable fashion and be able to scale. You know, when you explain it in a business context to any business leader, your IT team kind of looks useless. You know, when you say, well, you know, I don't know how to take A, B, C, D, E and just put it all together, you look kind of incompetent. But the challenges are a lot more intricate than that. And that's where Foundry really comes in. And maybe we'll see that the software engineer and his company may change their idea. Maybe they won't. And that's okay. So let's watch the video. Let's hear what he has to say. It's purely technical from what I gather. So it's nothing to do with stock price, cash flow, none of that. It's just why Foundry worked or why it didn't and why they decided to go another way. So let's watch it, and I will put it at a higher speed. And if it's a bit too intense, then I'll slow it down. But let's see what happens.
Back to the channel. You guys have been asking for it, so I'm going to get into it. The Foundry platform explained. Understanding AI and ML software, and we'll be going through my impressions of Foundry, how it can be used, how generally these features are used, and why we didn't adopt Foundry, and some suggestions I have for Palantir that can help them win future contracts. So let's get into the key components here. So the key components of any platform we build today to do ML and AI research is data governance, data science, and applications. And these things absolutely flow in the directions the arrows are showing. And each one of them is made up of several key pillars, right? And Foundry is no exception. Within data governance, generally, you have data producers, which are made up of like data pipelines and storage systems. And you'll have often materialized views of pipelines, which are things like aggregating data into maybe time series or some other aggregate view that you need to see it, and that's produced in real time as the data comes in most cases today. You have data owners who are responsible for data quality and access and catalogs, essentially govern who gets what from the data catalog. And then you have data consumers, right? And those are like your scientists and your analysts out there who are actively using this data to help organizations make decisions. And within the sort of data science realm, you have like the data engineering, which is like how do we most effectively store this data and architect it so that it's most usable by common query engines. And a good example of that is optimizing partitions for Spark or something. What is the optimal partition size so that Spark queries are efficient? So you have like data engineering that goes on there. You have feature engineering where we're trying to find out the neat relationships in the data, finding how things relate, and gaining a deep understanding of our data so that we can effectively model it, right? And so you also have traditional analytics, Tableau use cases and things like that. You have the actual modeling where data scientists are creating models after they've performed feature engineering to sort of see if we can make interesting predictive assertions, right? And then we also have scoring. This is often overlooked, but data scientists have to assign some confidence level. Typically, we're going to assign some confidence level to our models and sort of how psyched are we on this version of the model and should it be deployed to production, that sort of thing. And then you also have your application layer, right? And CI/CD, which is like continuous integration and deployment. Those are separate things, but basically, when you make changes to your models or to your data or to your code, it has to be integrated. And then, especially when you make changes to your models that need to be deployed, then you need an automated way to deploy that. And then you have application monitoring, right? We need to have our telemetry data. We need to know how things are working in production. If there's model degradation, we want to know about it. Which also touches on security and alerting. We want to make sure that if something's going wrong in production, that the appropriate people are notified. And then your availability, right? Like how scalable are those endpoints? How scalable are the models? Are they able to handle the traffic load? Is your system up and guaranteed up at the, per your SLA, right? So those are all the platforms. And Foundry absolutely supports every single one of those use cases, and it supports it in a stunning way, like way better than I thought it could, right? It is literally dozens, if not hundreds of products in one. When I saw Foundry.
Wow, that's cool. They always say that in all of the Alex Karp videos that I remember watching. He would always say, for competitors to even come close to Foundry, it would have to be like a Frankenstein of 100 different software suites or 100 different platforms or softwares put together to offer what Foundry does. And to hear that being echoed by someone completely independent, someone who kind of walked away from Palantir Foundry, to still say that, Palantir is literally dozens, if not hundreds of products in one, that's pretty incredible. So, you know why they so strongly believe that Foundry is going to be a game changer. And it's a tool that's built more for the future. And some people might not see their use case today, but they will when things get out of hand.
It appeared like it just literally supported every product I've ever seen, which was amazing. This platform is incredible. It's literally every data source I could imagine, every use case we just went over, every tool, every popular industry tool from Snowflake to Databricks to all of your standard cloud providers to standard relational databases, ERP, CRM. It basically supports everything, and it's also got complete security, right? So like nothing that they've done overlooked security at all. In fact, it's probably the most well-defined set of controls and sort of most secure platform out of the box I've ever seen. So Foundry is absolutely incredible. And it really is the big data OS. When we talk about what is the big data OS, if you watch my original video, Palantir's Value Explained, and I showed how Palantir was going to unify all of these things, that is the big data OS. It's how do you bring together all of these tools and all of these data sources into one unified platform that can support the modern organization. And Foundry is absolutely that. And Foundry can enable the future, right? So like what's interesting about Foundry is that it is already being tooled up to support blockchain technology, in particular like cryptocurrency transactions and understanding transaction data and fraud. And that's going to be a key point as organizations sort of build business consortiums that use digital contracts to execute essentially agreements between themselves and start trading in cryptocurrency as opposed to dollars. So like as organizations decide to sort of operate in a more autonomous way through digital contracts and using AI and ML to surface signal data to execute those contracts, probably the most likely way they're going to transact value is through cryptocurrency, in my opinion. And Palantir is really set up, Foundry is really set up to enable this sort of not only like business structure, but the transactions between the businesses. And it also is amazing at security, like I said before, and that really plays a big role when you start getting into KYC and into being able to assert who this entity or person says they are, like that assertion, being able to validate that assertion, but do it in a decentralized way, which is the hard part of this. That is, when people talk about Web 3.0 or decentralized applications, that decentralization of that is super hard. And I believe that Palantir is on the cutting edge of enabling that future decentralization, and they know it. They totally know it. They have this. It's their secret. I think it's their insight into the future, is that the future is decentralized. And also the future is low code or no code. And Foundry definitely empowers non-technical users. I'm not telling you guys anything you probably haven't heard before, but Foundry does have some really amazing no to low code features built in. And I really believe that that's the people who don't code, the people who are unable to do the engineering, that's the vast majority of decision makers in an organization. And so if we look at today, we definitely have a bottleneck. Like the data is coming in at an astounding rate, but engineering is absolutely the bottleneck. Putting that data through all of the technical machinery that has to get it to a point where you can make a decision on it, that really slows down and hinders organizations. And in a lot of ways, like insightful models are really going to be a commodity, I think, in the future, like because we're all making models that are basically, in the same category. Maybe they need to be tuned to your particular data set. I think that in the future, the model is the commodity, the science is the commodity, and really it's the platform that enables the use of those models that's the winner. And it's where we get to in the future, where we just go from data to decisions. We don't have to necessarily go through all of the work we do today. And Foundry absolutely is in my opinion, on the cutting edge of that. I think they have the best low code, no code solution out there. But why didn't we purchase Foundry? Right? Like, this is a tough one. For me, is that there's this DIY mindset out there in the industry. So it really reminds me of like sort of the late 90s, early 2000s when like everyone in IT was all about rolling their own data centers. Like that was, oh man, we're going to roll our own. We're not going to co-locate with the cloud. What the hell's the cloud? So like, and the cloud, honestly, it didn't come around more till like 2010, really, when people started really adopting the cloud. So maybe even a little after. But it really reminds me right now, like the IT departments, they want to take all of the open source technology and they want to use AWS and they want to kind of roll their own Foundry platform. But what's interesting about that is that this is like a multi-year process. Like I've said this before numerous times on the channel, like that's a 2 to 3 year process to get.
That's hilarious. They didn't purchase the Foundry product despite, this leader knowing that it was a great tool and it was fantastic right out of the box. They still decided, let's roll up our sleeves and run this project ourselves over, many quarters, 2 to 3 years, I think he said, despite having an incredible tool at their disposal, they still decided to do it. And he states it super clearly, like Palantir really needs to figure out how they want to win the build versus buy debate. And that's what Shyam said at the call when we listened at the beginning. It's really the biggest competitors are the internal teams, because engineers are builders by nature. So you can't tell an engineer, oh, you have this problem, but you know what, instead of you trying to fix it, we're gonna do an outsourced solution. Like there is, I know engineers, I've worked with them, there is this natural craving to solve their own problem themselves, and they feel like the purpose for being hired in the IT team is not to outsource the work to another firm. It's more you solve the problems themselves. So a lot of competent people do have to be won over by the Foundry opportunity. This Foundry opportunity will allow you to deploy in 10 days, and you can focus on your bigger problems that can help the business generate value. But this is it. Like, how is it going to happen? At the end of the day, business is humans, and if humans have egos, humans have personalities, and engineers, they're very, very sharp, intelligent. They've studied a lot to get where they are. They've experienced a lot to get where they are. And when you tell them, sorry, man, let's go outsource this because, it looks like you can't do it yourself, it's a challenge. And, engineers love challenges. So it's a big issue. And I get it. I'd love to hear what he has to say.
it's where it actually delivers any kind of business value. And it's really shocking to me that decision makers and organizations on the technology side don't recognize how risky of an endeavor that is, and like, why wouldn't you want to just take the boost now and get into and be competitive now rather than 2-3 years from now, just because I don't know, like maybe it's an ego thing, like putting these things together somehow makes you a better engineer, or like it's you're standing out among your peers because you're competing with what they're doing. You're not just like taking a shortcut or something. I don't know, I don't know, but it does really remind me of that mindset of the early 2000s. So Palantir is really going to have to figure out how to win this build versus buy debate, and that doesn't get easier when you push down market. I think that winning the build versus the buy debate in larger organizations is really a key of the executive leadership, or is like something you can solve at the executive leadership level. Whereas as you push down market, you're dealing with smaller organizations. This problem is generally compounded. People don't necessarily understand high-level business decision-making at the level they do, say, in the Global 2000s, or in the Global 2000. So, the Palantir really needs to figure out how they're going to deal with this. And in my opinion, I have some recommendations, right? So, like, the first one is Alex Karp, Executive Golf Pro, right? So, like, I remember that back in the day, what really enabled a lot of AWS adoption, at least at the higher levels, and especially like Azure and GCP, is like, let's get the CEOs together for a round of golf, right? Let's get the people who actually make decisions together and cut through the bullshit and really explain the value proposition over a round of golf and some drinks, maybe. And honestly, I think this is where if they want to make big headwinds in the Global 2000 or in really large organizations, they're probably doing this. They definitely didn't do this with us. We're a small company, but I think that's where we've got to cut through the bullshit, and Karp's got to get.
That's a great point. In Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, they spoke about how at Palantir, Gary developed an excellent product, but the software or the solutions that Palantir is selling is not a $50,000 solution or $100,000 solution. It's a multi-million-dollar solution. And when it's a multi-million-dollar solution, businesses don't want to talk to, the manager of sales or the VP. They want to talk to the CEO. So Alex Karp was always on the road doing sales.
Really good at explaining exactly, like in clear terms, not like dancing around, swaying side to side, dancing around in lofty language and quoting Hegel. No, you need to like clearly and warmly explain the value proposition of this platform and how it can help your customer or your potential customer. So I think that's something that could really help them advance and win this build versus buy debate, and focus on startups, which they're doing. That's great, but I think that's where AWS made the vast majority of its headwinds, because that's where the value proposition is strongest, because startups didn't have the money to build a data center. It was just off the table right away. And by enabling them to get past that hurdle and go straight to code, or relatively straight to code, it's a huge boost. I mean, that was like, oh my God, we can get by on a fraction of the money in half the time. And that's really, I think, something they've got to focus on, is somehow getting into these startups and focusing on that. But the way you do that is to democratize Foundry. You got to build a developer community. You've got to have training set up that anyone can access. You got to have, provide onboarding on the website, so I don't have to go through an upfront sales process. Like, I should just be able to sign up, start using this thing. There should be quick start guides, getting started guides, and you should be investing by holding developer conferences, going around city to city, holding, just like Databricks does. I've been to plenty of Databricks conferences, and they warmly welcome you there, and they get you started with their platform. They'll even certify you at the conference, right? So they absolutely have to start doing this. They're going to lose 100% if they don't start doing this right away. And can the secrecy bullshit? Okay, there's nothing that I don't believe there's anything that they would give away by just being open. I'm not sure why they're so secretive. It scares me as an investor that they are a little secretive, because it's like, why are you secretive? The platform looks
that's cool. CodeStrap is an investor in Palantir. That's dope.
Looks amazing. Why wouldn't you want people to see this? It's not like you're giving away national secrets or something, but that is a little scary, and so I think that they should, just for the sake of the investment community too, can the secrecy crap and get this in the hands of people, and have an onboarding process through the website. And you don't have to refactor your technology. Slack has onboarding through their website, but it's often the provisioning looks a lot probably like Foundry does. They just need to automate the provisioning process. So for me, that's an absolute must. So yeah, these are my recommendations of what I think they could do to sort of win that build versus the buy debate based on our experience going through the process. And so, but why can Foundry win? So this was something I was thinking of, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I wrote an article back in 2020 criticizing AWS, and it's sheer lack of, it's horrible developer experience, it's overlapping services, and it's largely worse than services that are just focused on this, or companies that are focused on just this one aspect. And here's some good examples, right? So AWS Cognito is an identity and authorization platform, but so is Auth0. And Auth0 that's all they do. They just do identity and authorization, and it's amazing. And the developer experience is incredible. And AWS Cognito is a pile of dog shit, and the developer experience is terrible. And that is the same thing with virtually every AWS service, like DocumentDB. DocumentDB is just a copy of MongoDB, except the platform experience of actually having to use the platform on AWS is worse than MongoDB. MongoDB is amazing. MongoDB Atlas was probably the best platform I've ever used to provision a document database and manage it in production. And I love MongoDB. I think they're that database is the most versatile application database out there, and I've used it for years. I've loved it. It doesn't do everything, but it does everything that an app would need, right? So It's not to be the only database in your stack, but the point is that MongoDB is focused on this one use case, right? Their Atlas platform is focused on this one thing, whereas like DocumentDB and Cognito and SageMaker, they're all just these little sort of siloed groups in AWS, and they largely run into each other, and they never produce a good developer experience. And this is where AWS could really, I think Amazon eventually will have to like spin off, AWS into a separate company, and maybe take their best services and make them standalone companies so they can focus on just those things. But this is why Foundry can win, because Palantir is, this company's focused on one thing, and that's the big data OS, which does compete with AWS SageMaker or Studio, but it's so much better. Like I don't even see it as competition, because like it's almost like apples and oranges comparison, given how advanced Foundry is. So like, there's a real big reason they can win, right? But
yeah, obviously, CodeStrap is a software engineer, so he knows the shit. But SageMaker, I always thought they were different just based on these descriptions that they have here. Like, Amazon SageMaker is a cloud machine learning platform that was launched in November 17, enables developers to create, train, and deploy machine learning modules in the cloud, deploy ML machine learning modules on embedded systems and edge devices. Okay, I think he's referring to this specific module where they have building an artificial intelligence or machine learning module for one-time insight. Whereas, I mean, there's a lot of, I guess, other concepts or other modules, so it's a bit different. So this is the side of Foundry that I always thought of, like, oh, the ontology side, where they help companies put data together. And I think this is what CodeStrap was referring to when he felt like SageMaker was there. Let's continue.
I think this is the key insight in my mind, is that a Palantir cloud is basically a must, right? Because AWS is just a fucking clown car show, like trying to put all these pieces of their jigsaw puzzle into some usable use case that you can barely keep running for the reasons I just stated, right? Like the way they build their products, yes, they're customer focused, but they're not well engineered and from the standpoint of the developer. And like if Palantir could launch its own cloud, that is the future of business.
Palantir cloud looks like it's a must, and Apollo is not a cloud. Apollo is a system that works and brings all these clouds together.
It's literally this, basically operating system, and it's easy to provision everything, and you get the use cases you need right out of the box. You don't have to sit there and write all this infrastructure as code and like deal with fucking IAM permissions and everything else that goes into like making anything run on AWS. And it would be incredible. It would crush it. It would crush AWS. I mean, this is the real opportunity that I see in Foundry, that I see in Palantir. When I say that they're going to have like $1 trillion TAM at some point, this is going into that, because it's not just what AI software.
Okay, CodeStrap thinks it's going to be $1 trillion TAM product offering for Palantir. Nice.
The AI software market is going to be. This is like in Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1, where he talks about like, what is the real TAM? He talks about like, is it just this one use case, or is it really this broader TAM? And like, this is really where we're at, I think, with Palantir, and people aren't realizing, is that the TAM also includes cloud, right? It also includes AI software, but it's also just going to include like normal things that you wouldn't think of, like identity to do things like apply for loan applications. And it will be things where you want to deploy models to every client device out there, every IoT, application possible. That cloud, Palantir cloud, can address like things that just no one else can do today, like Apollo being able to deploy out to the edge. That is going to be the future of AI. Like every model we're deploying now, like we really look to client side first. We're really trying to get away from anything that has to go out to hit a model endpoint. It's just so much more efficient to have your apps work directly with the model that you built when it's on the device. And Apollo is really well positioned to just kick the crap out of everything out there, in my opinion. And so like a Palantir cloud that brings all this stuff together and really builds the modern operating system for business would just freaking destroy everything out there. So like, yeah, for me, that's that's something like is a key insight based on my experience with the platform and sort of where I see things going. So yeah, I mean, and again, this is just me, I'm not speaking on behalf of Palantir or any of the people there. These are my impressions, my thoughts, so take with it what you will. But in my opinion, this platform is just the shit. So.
All right, so this video by CodeStrap was really insightful. I am super happy that he took the time to shoot that video and share his technical knowledge with the world. Make sure to go check out CodeStrap's channel, subscribe. He has a lot of good videos about Palantir. I could see that, he's been invested for quite some time. It is pretty cool that you have some people from the Palantir community that are technical, that are financial, and everybody's giving their insights, sharing their insights. That's what I love about the Palantir community. So make sure you hit up CodeStrap, and maybe one day I could reach out to CodeStrap and he'll be willing to come and do a little one-on-one dance, and we can understand and see and share our thoughts on Palantir. So that's it for me today, and I want to thank you all for watching. One big thing that I'm so happy about, I think it was literally 10 days ago that I had 22 subscribers, and now I'm crossing like 170, which is crazy. So thank you so much for your love and support, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.